Hi, I'm Dan Hanford. Nice to meet you. Looking forward to sharing with you some negotiating tactics that will be from my special guest that we had on for our daily tips. We had an episode with him on our podcast recently, and he also wanted to provide our listeners with some additional negotiating tactics. And so he actually came up with 16 different negotiating tactics, and I wanted to highlight some of these with you here today. And so for those of you who are negotiating at all, which all of us at some point in time are going to be negotiating, whether it's personally with buying a car or a house, or if you're in a business and you're selling a product or a service, or maybe you're selling businesses. So that's one of the things that Cliff is very good at is being able to sell businesses. And he has a company called Oxford Center for Entrepreneurs. I'm a member of that organization, and it's only for high-level, already successful entrepreneurs. So if you are already a successful entrepreneur, you want to start to follow him. He is a very, very intelligent businessman and is very, down to earth. Love talking with him. He's really great. You can find out more information from Cliff Oxford at theoxfordcenter.com. And when you go to that website, they have what's called a morning report. And on that morning report, every day you'll get an email from Cliff where he goes through very high-level news as well as information about other entrepreneurs and what they're doing and how they're being so successful. I also visited one of the events that he put on recently in Atlanta, Georgia at the Porsche headquarters. Some of you might have noticed a post that I made about that. It was an excellent time, excellent event, had a lot of high-level entrepreneurs in the room that we were able to talk about our businesses and different ways to strategize to help other businesses and other owners across the country. There were people from the West Coast all the way to the East Coast, North and South at that event. And there was 125 people at the event, and he ended up having to turn away about 60, 70 people that really wanted to come be a part of that event. It was a non-scripted event. He wasn't trying to sell anything or anything like that. It was really just trying to help entrepreneurs and highlighting the various businesses that are part of the Oxford Center for Entrepreneurs. It's a company that's also owned by Advantage Media Forbes Books, so it's a very well-known organization that now has purchased them. But Cliff Oxford is the brains behind it, so be sure to go to oxfordcenter.com to visit him. But also want you to subscribe to our Tough Decisions podcast, and over the next couple of weeks we will be releasing some daily tips on negotiating tactics. He has 16 of them that he put together for us. I just got off the line with him, and he just finished up recording those. So they're being edited right now. They'll start to be released. So if you're an entrepreneur, you're successful, you want to learn how to negotiate better, be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you can get these 16 tips. I wanted to highlight 4 of them here with you today. So the first one I wanted to highlight is number 4 of 16, which he talks about how you should never split the difference in a negotiating process. And so he goes deep into why you should not split the difference there. The other thing he talks about in episode 7 is never go for broke. He talks about how in one of the businesses that he had, he exited it successfully. He actually at that time was selling a software to large companies like Ralph Lauren, Chick-fil-A, corporate, and Walmart. So we've all heard of those large name brands. And one of the things that he had to do was he had to turn away a deal because they basically were going to put him out of business by doing that particular deal. And so he had to walk away. And he shares that story with us about how he turned away a deal where Walmart was ready to sign the line, but Walmart was a very aggressive negotiator, and so they got to the point where they just didn't want to go for broke in that situation. So he talks about that a little bit more. Number 9, he talks about how to deal with deadlocks. Many times in negotiations, there's an impasse between the two parties, and we just can't, come to an agreement. And he talks about how to deal with those deadlocks. He also talks about, and on that same time frame in the episodes, he talks about the brilliant jerk. Never heard of the brilliant jerk before. Almost every business has one or has had one in the past, and if you don't get rid of that brilliant jerk, a lot of times it can hold back your growth and stunt the actual growth of the company. And he talks about that a little bit more in his article that he did on, I think it was the New York Times, article where he talks about the brilliant jerk. So if you Google New York Times and Brilliant Jerk, you can find that article where he talks about the Brilliant Jerk a little bit more. A little bit controversial, so make sure you check it out and really understand what that Brilliant Jerk is and how it can affect your business. The last one I wanted to highlight here is the last one, which is number 16. Having the mental discipline to be able to stay to the very end in the negotiating process. A lot of times you have to, there's a whole long process, could be, multiple days or weeks or months that go on in the negotiating process, and keeping each one of these 16 tips in mind is very important, and also having the mental discipline to stay to the very end. So thank you for watching this video while I highlight the negotiating tactics that'll be released on our daily tips. These daily tips are usually between 3 to 5 minutes long. Sometimes they go a little bit longer, maybe upwards to 7 or 8 minutes, but most of the time we try to keep them between 3 to 5 minute bite-sized tips so you can digest them on a daily basis. So on iTunes, you can find us. Just type in Tough Decisions and you'll see our podcast. It's Tough Decisions for Entrepreneurs. It's with Dan and Danae, which is my wife. And so the Tough Decisions podcast is very important for you because it can give you a lot of information to help you as an entrepreneur. And we're also interviewing high-level entrepreneurs on a daily basis as well. So again, thank you so much for listening and watching to this video. Please be sure to subscribe on iTunes. We're also on Google Play, Stitcher, as well as Spotify. So if you have any of those other platforms, be sure to check us out and look forward to helping you as we move forward on this podcast.